Mexican cartels is another thing that concerns me. I mean, is this a national security issue for America? We have what seems to be more and more a lawless country on our southern border. My parents lived in Mexico for 5 years, and they
Wow.
were forced to leave as the violence moved into their small town in the state of Jalisco. There was grenade fire. I mean, there was a full on
No, that's awful.
yeah, and so. And there was this recent thing with the Mormons who were
Yeah,
murdered
terrible.
there. Terrible, and they're not just criminals. They're so violent and they're so ruthless. What can we do about this? I mean, it's a continental issue. I find. Why is Mexico and America not collaborating on this? Is it what's going on here? What do we do about this? Do you see it as an issue?
Oh yeah, of course, it's a major issue, on several levels. It's one of those situations where helping others helps us.
Yes.
Like we have to do everything we can to help stabilize what's happening in Mexico. The tough part is that there's a lot of corruption there. So you get there and you're like, hey, let's break the backs of the cartels or let's do something positive. And the cartels have bought and sold a lot of the officials there that you'd hope to be working with.
And the ones that aren't are murdered.
Yeah.
It seems like.
Yeah. So it's a tough context to get positive things done in, but it's a situation where if you do put economic aid and resources to work, it actually goes a very, very long way. And one of the reasons why people are trying to migrate into the U.S. is because their towns are being overrun by violence.
It's not. I think these immigrants have been so demonized. It's just such a shame. I mean, they're escaping violence. They're not. I don't know what people think about these. Like, I remember when Trump was during the election, there was this whole thing about the caravan, right?
Yeah, the caravan. I mean, he always has these cheap political stunts. One approach we could take that would change the resources available to the cartel is explore the legalization of certain drugs.
Yes.
And I'm open to looking at legalizing different drugs that are not just fueling the cartel, but also in some cases would frankly be an upgrade over the opiates that many Americans are currently getting addicted to.
What are we talking about? Marijuana?
Oh, marijuana is the easy one.
That's obvious.
I mean, that's
people already there.
Yeah, that one's the easy one. And this is not a huge economic driver of the cartels, but psilocybin mushrooms and psychedelics have been proven to.
What are they selling? Is it heroin? Is it meth? I know it's marijuana.
Yeah, it's and so this is the most dramatic one. Is I'm actually looking to decriminalize opiates for personal use because we have 8 Americans dying of drug overdoses every hour in this country. We've essentially initiated this massive opiate addiction plague, and it was a disease of capitalism. It started out Purdue Pharma prescribing OxyContin and saying it's a non-addictive wonder drug. And then there was one point in our history, not that long ago, like 6-7 years ago, there were more opiate prescriptions in the state of Ohio than there were human beings in the state of Ohio.
I saw a 60 Minutes report on that. It blew my mind. And they have these pain clinics on every corner with these crooked doctors just writing scripts for people. It was unbelievable.
Yeah, so what happened was OxyContin addiction morphed into fentanyl and heroin. And then a lot of that is what's getting trafficked now. So we've created this nation of addicts, and they've actually found that OxyContin is now harder to get a hold of than the illegal stuff.
Right.
So you have this massive drug trade, and then it's driving the resources. So what I'm proposing is we legalize opiates for personal use, which means if we catch you with the drugs, you get the drugs taken away from you, but we don't send you to jail. We send you to treatment and counseling. And then we set up safe injection sites and safe consumption sites in the U.S. that are controversial, but they've been proven to work and save lives. And then if you did this, you could bring in some of this drug use out of the shadows and then get your user base down and then get the economic resources that are going to the cartels down. It's a dramatic move, but I was pushed in this direction by a high school senior in Iowa. I believe it was a town called Storm Lake. And he said he's a high school senior, and his classmates have fentanyl patches on their arms because they're already addicted.
What?
Wow.
And I was like, and then he said, like, what can you do to help my classmates?
Wow.
And so I talked to him at the event. I was like, what can we do? And he said, well, I'll tell you one thing. Like, they're not going to let anyone know they've got a problem because fentanyl's illegal and they don't want to, like, get a criminal record.
They'll go to
on this.
jail. They're going to go to jail for years.
Yeah.
For what?
Yeah. So then I said, oh my gosh, like, how can you get that freaking kid's classmates help? And they're never going to go to the cops if, like, they're going to freaking get busted for it. So then it's like, well, if you actually decriminalized it, so if they went and said, hey, like, help me get off this stuff, then it'd be like, all right, like, and then you don't get a criminal record, then you can actually start making progress.
So who sells them the opiates? If we want to cut out the cartel, and you're legal.
Well, decriminalizing
it. So where are they buying the drugs?
So right now they're buying it from dealers.
Yeah.
And then in my new world, they'd still be buying it from dealers. The dealers still go to jail. It's just the individual users don't get sent to jail with the dealer. So I'm not saying legalize it in the way of like make it like heroin available and like
because the
US,
cartel
like
is
that.
still essentially making the money from supplying the dealers.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering. I mean, ultimately, your vision is that people start using it less.
Yeah, like you have to try and attack demand.
And they can actually ask for help.
Yeah, you have to try and and when other countries have decriminalized opiates in this way, they saw reductions not just in overdose rates but in abuse rates. And then you try and obviously we'd prefer a country where fewer of us are addicted to drugs.
Yeah.
And this addiction plague is so rampant, it's heartbreaking. I'm in Iowa and New Hampshire, and people will come to me and say, my brother died, my son died. Like, everyone has a story about someone who died that's close to them. And it's disgusting. Like, the fact that we let this happen in our country because, essentially, of capitalism run amok. Like, Purdue Pharma made $30 billion on this and then paid a $635 million fine. So they paid a 2% fine.
Mm-hmm. Good
deal.
Like,
yeah, it's a good deal. And like their family is now one of the richest families in the country, the Sackler family. So this is a disease where the government essentially turned a blind eye and let a drug company kill tens of thousands of Americans for profit. And now we're left with the mess, and it actually is fueling the bill. And it's a human toll. It's like you can't bring that person's son back. You can't bring that person's brother back. And it's fueling what's happening with the drug cartels because this is the majority of their business. Because it morphed from oxy to heroin and fentanyl and a bunch of the other illegals.
Right. Which makes total sense. You can tell that, it's the same thing. I don't know if people know that. It's the same thing. It's just that these drug companies have a pretty little packaging and it comes from a doctor. But it's the same shit as that you get down in Mexico and shoot up in your arm. Pretty much.
Yeah, we're over-medicating our people to a very high level here in this country. And for some people, if the drug's what's going to help you, then by all means. But it should not be the first move or the first resort. Because the fact is, a lot of the drug interactions, and I've talked to many Americans who've had this experience, like the doctor doesn't really know how the drug's going to interact with you. It's like,
of course, right.
They have you in the office and be like, take this. It's worked for some of my patients. And then
you stub your toe. Here's OxyContin.
Oh yeah, like I have friends
what?
who are like, why are you giving me this painkiller? It's like, I'm going to be all right. They'd be like, yeah, just take it. It's
right.
like, what is going on?
Right.
Yeah.
If anything, we should be like, do you really need this? Like, you should have to beg me for this thing. Because the fact is, after they prescribed Oxy, there was like, I forget what the percentage, but there was like a, like let's call it like non-trivial, it's like maybe like a 3% chance you're dead within.
No.
Yeah, no, it was true.
Oh my God.
It was something
now
like
that's a good doctor.
There was like a 2 or 3% chance
crap.
you were dead within 5 years.
Wow.
Like
that is so horrific.
Yeah, it's incredible. Like you go in for something non-lethal, and they prescribe you something lethal in like a non-trivial number of cases.
Wow.